Yeah,
To
yes, Professor Ansari.
Okay, I'll give you the go ahead in a few minutes, okay, or maybe in 1 minute or so, okay.
Okay.
Uh, Very good. You're looking good, Arsha.
Thank you.
Okay, Wes is also here. Wes, are you
Yes, I'm
ready?
here. Welcome.
Okay, we'll have to make you a co-host somehow. So,
I have done that, sir.
okay, very good, Khalid. Wonderful. So I think we can begin then. We have about 37 students, which is a healthy number given the special nature of this topic. Arshan, over to you. You can go ahead and introduce Zohaib.
Thank you, Professor Ansari. Respected mentors and dear mentees, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce my mentor, today's speaker, and a very good friend of mine, who is going to speak about applying to universities for MS. Our speaker for today has completed his BTech from NIT Warangal. Then he traveled to Canada for Masters, where he converted into PhD, University of Alberta, Canada. He is working as an RF hardware research specialist at 3M Company, Corporate Research and Systems Lab at St. Paul's, USA. He has been leading and managing a global team as a product owner to develop new 3M technologies in RF market, prominently in 5G, wireless charging, RFID, wireless sensors market. During his PhD, he designed and successfully implemented several chip tape sort of integrated RF energy harvesting circuits. He also worked as an intern at 3M Company during his PhD. He likes hiking and completing hobby electronics during his free time. Please join me in welcoming Zohaib Hameed.
Thank you, Arshan. Let me share my screen. Let me do that. Screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'll do a presenter. Switch the. So, do you see the proper view, the main view? You're muted, Professor Ansari.
So we are seeing both your presentation as well as the presenter view. So I think you need to go into PowerPoint and set up the.
Got it. Let me unshare it just to be sure.
You're using PowerPoint, right, Zohaib?
Yeah, I'm using PowerPoint.
Okay.
Let me see, how do I unshare it? Yeah, it won't. I just see it now.
Yeah, this is good. But now suppose you go into presentation mode, let's see what happens. Yeah, we are still seeing this because I think somewhere in your PowerPoint, there is some, thing that you can do to. Yeah, this is fine. This is perfect now. Okay.
Now it's good?
Yeah, it's perfect now.
Okay, thank you. Let me move this here. Okay. So yeah, thank you, Arshan, for the wonderful introduction. So during the course of my presentation, feel free to submit questions in the chat window. So what I'm planning to do is after every 4 to 5 slides, I'll take a pause to answer the questions. And if an answer to the question is in the later part of the presentation, I will indicate that to you, and we can follow up to that question at that time. So many of the topics I will be discussing is applicable for both MS and PhD program. But since the focus of our talk will be more on the MS program, certain criterias which have more weightage for the MS program or certain criterias which have more weightage for the PhD program, I will indicate that to you during the course of the presentation. So that's so this is what I wanted to make clear before moving on to the presentation. So the first question, before talking about what's the application process of getting into grad school, how your application package should look like, what are the criterias, I think we should take a step back and try to understand and try to ask ourselves whether why am I applying to a graduate school? So I would recommend each of the mentees over here to ask yourself this question, like, should I apply to grad school? Some of the reason I believe which are good reasons to apply to a grad school. The first being if you're passionate and you have interest in certain topic or a combination of topics. So for example, people who are in ECE, someone likes circuit design, or mentees who are in computer science, they are interested in machine learning, or you're interested in combination of topics. So in research and in MS, you will realize that the topics are very interdisciplinary. Like you will see a combination of topics. So for example, machine learning for medical applications or circuits for image processing. So if you have certain interest in certain topics or combination of topics, it's a good reason to apply. If you enjoy research or creative activities, if you seek a richer or satisfying life, and you want to enhance your career, so just doing bachelor's is not enough. You want to learn more, probably advance your career by getting higher education. That's one of a good motivation to apply. And ultimately earning more money. Who does not want to earn more money? So this is also a good reason to apply. The other thing which I want to talk about, and this is, I say some of them are very typical, and it does come to your mind. And some of the reasons not to are, first reason is, someone in your family really want you to complete and go for higher education to US or Canada, or you have seen some of your friends who have done this and you just want to follow their route. So going to grad school to please someone else is not the right thought, just not the only reason why you should apply to a grad school. The other thing I would say is you have no idea or no clue on what you want to study or what you want to do after advanced degree. So at least, I don't believe that you should have a complete plan laid out, but at least you should have some idea around why you want to do, what will you do after getting an advanced degree, and so on and so forth. So one thing I also want to mention is seeking higher salary and a good quality of life can be a great motivator to apply to a grad school. So all these are good reasoning. However, that should not be the only reason you want to apply to grad school. So only if you want to earn money, this will not be sustainable. You'll soon realize once you're in a graduate school, you have to be motivated. You have to enjoy research, and these are the other things which will help you earn money. But if you only want to earn money, then that's not the only good reason to go to a grad school and apply for all higher studies in US or Canada. So I just wanted to make these things clear before moving on to our actual presentation. So now, like, I'm assuming you have determined you want to apply to a graduate school in US, Canada. So preparation of the graduate application is very important, and that's the only thing we will see. Some of the professors or some of the universities do have interview process. If a professor wants you to have you in the research group, he might have a Skype interview with you, but the first thing he will see is your graduate application. So graduate application consists of multiple things, some of the criteria which are important, and I'm going to talk about each of these things in my following slides. I will emphasize on academics, why academics are important, how it is important, and what should be preferable in terms of academics, your GRE, what score is expected, and I will also talk about research. So when I say get involved in research, I mean do internships, do projects. If you get conference paper, that's a big plus. Research is very important if you're applying for a PhD program. For MS program, it is important, but the weightage is not as much as for a PhD program. And then shortlisting universities and research group is both important for MS and PhD. So you want to understand what universities you want to go in. If you want to do a thesis-based master's, you need to know what research group is suitable for you. So these are some important steps. And the other thing is making contacts with prospective professor or research group. So this is also very important, I would say. And it has much higher weightage for PhD program, where you have to have some network and talk to a professor and do all of those things. For MS program, I would not say this is super important, but if a professor knows you, it is always going to help you in getting an admit quickly. So I will encourage everyone to follow this step as well. And the last thing I would say is the application package consists of multiple things: statement of purpose, resume, your academia, your CV, and all those things. So it is a tedious process. So I will say start early. I have an application package timeline in the end of the presentation suggesting at what month you should be done with what things. We'll discuss that during that point. So let me go ahead and try to talk about each of those things. And in a couple of slides, I'll take a pause and we'll look at the chat window for relevant questions. So the first thing, academics. So what is a good GPA? So everyone will have this in mind, like I'm a 9-pointer, I'm an 8-pointer, I'm a 7-pointer. Is that good enough? What I would say is no GPA is good that will assure you admittance to a university. So even if I'm a 10-pointer, 10 out of 10, that doesn't mean I will get into the best university. This is not the only criteria universities determine. But if your GPA is not so good, if it is if it is below their cutoff or even like closer to their cutoff, other factors might not be too relevant. So I will highly encourage that academics is something which is in our control. So try to get a good GPA. The GPA requirements vary a lot between universities, depends on what universities you're applying, what you're looking for. What I have seen based on my experience, so if you're applying for a master's, for example, in computer science, so programming skill is very important. So your prospective university or whatever is a graduate selection committee will start looking into GPA in the courses of your major. So they might be considered separately and might be given more weightage. In my experience, when I got admitted to a university in Canada, my professor explicitly looked at the courses which was relevant to his research and made sure that I had excellent grades in those courses. So that was one of his criteria, and that's very normal for multiple universities. What I would still say, a very rough idea of minimum GPAs that will keep your application in pool. And this is like the bare minimum where you will still have a chance of getting an admit. Competitive programs in US, the GPA system is out of 4. So they say it's 3 out of 4. But my recommendation based on my experience, I would say at least above 7 out of 10. So again, I understand some of the universities. So for example, I studied in NIT where the marking system was much more stricter. And the average GPA is around 7.5, 7 to 7.5 or so. In BITS Pilani, for example, their average GPA is more around 6.5 or so. So this varies a lot from universities to universities. What I would suggest whenever you're applying, you should always mention that my rank was number 5 out of 200. My rank was, so at least they would get some kind of like comparison in terms of how you stand amongst these number of people rather than just giving a number to them. But I would still encourage everyone to focus on their academics so that your application package stands out. Next thing I want to talk about is GRE. So the first question that will come in the mind of everyone is, what is a good GRE score? When should I start applying? When should I start studying? And when should I give the test and all those things? So what I want to answer in this slide, and I'll answer other things that are related to GRE in my later slides as well. But the first question would be, what is a good GRE score? Again, like GPAs, no test score for GRE is so good that it will assure you admittance. So I know people who have got score above 330 out of 340 in GRE still did not made it to many universities. And I know people who have got score of even 310, 315, and they made into some university. So again, this is something which is in our control. You should aim for as high as a score as you can. And the other thing would be you have to start preparing early for this. The minimum score requirements will vary greatly from universities to universities. What I would still say is if the score is less, then the other things will not matter. So for example, you have a good academic, you have a good research, you have good resume, but your GRE score is not so good. Like it is very close to the minimum score requirement. It will not matter. So if your score is less, then the other things will not matter. So again, I'll emphasize on science and engineering. Basically, when you're applying master in science, master in engineering, they tend to emphasize more on the math part. But from my experience in India, verbal is our bottleneck. So you will take a lot of time to study for the verbal, and so do that accordingly. And the last thing I would say about this GRE is do not take these tests just preparing for a couple of weeks or so, or if you're not well prepared, do not take these tests cold. So allow ample time to review and prepare this as one of a very important exam. And again, I'll show you the timeline, what I think when you should give the GRE, when you should start preparing in the later slides. Next thing I want to talk about is get involved in research. And as I mentioned in my earlier slides, research is an important criteria for PhD program. For masters, it might not be so important, but think about this. You have other students applying with you in masters. Most of these students, in order to stand out, they will do some kind of internship, and they might have internship from schools or known companies, and that will stand out in their application package. So I will encourage people, everyone, all the mentees to try doing an internship from branded schools like IIT or Triple IT or IISc or known company has more weightage in US or Canada. I know from my experiences amongst even non-Indian people, professors over here, most of the professor knows about these branded schools, and having their name on their resume and on your statement of purpose does play a big role. It's not the only criteria, I would say, but it does have an impact. So try to do an internship from branded school if possible. At the very minimum, I would suggest do a research project with a faculty in your college. So at least having some kind of research project with your faculty, try to publish a paper with them, but try to get involved in all of these things. Again, I'll say publishing articles in IEEE paper or journals is a big plus. It really helps in your application package, and it really helps to show that you're very much interested in research and you're a good master's candidate, or for PhD, this becomes even more critical. And what I would say is start early. So getting involved in research project, getting involved in internship, start doing it from your second year, third year summers, and whenever possible, try to collaborate with professors, show them your interest. Most of the professors in India, I've seen, if they are they might be studying PhD themselves from an IIT or other institute, and they are interested in publishing papers. So that was my experience. So when I was in NIT Warangal, in my second year, third year, I knew some of my professors who were actually doing PhD in IITs, and they were teaching us as well. So we made a pact that I'm going to help you in terms of going through the literature and probably implementing some circuits or doing things like that. And we will publish papers together if possible. And I will be writing the paper. And my professors agreed on that. And I was able to publish a couple of papers during my tenure in NIT Warangal. And that really helped talking to my professor, which when I did my PhD. Now, I mean, we are like friends, like we talk. And I was asking him about what made you select me, and he told me some of the criteria was showing interest in the research and papers, and I've seen him selecting other students to his research group. So these play a big role as well. Lastly, I would say doing research makes your statement of purpose strong. So statement of purpose is something which I'll talk about in my later slide. But you have to basically tell in your statement of purpose that my passion led me to do these many projects. This was my research experience, internship experience, and that's why I'm interested in the research field and I deserve to get accepted. So it's like a case where you're making a case that why do you deserve to get accepted to the research program, and getting involved in research, having projects has weightage, because then you will be able to justify why you are a deserving candidate to the research group. So again, this is pretty important. So I'm going to take a pause since I covered a couple of topics, and we can take few questions if there are any. Professor Ansari, do you want to go to the chat window? I don't want to unshare the screen and start looking at the chat.
Yeah, certainly, actually, there is nothing yet in the chat window, but let's wait a couple of minutes and see if somebody types in something. Or if you have a question, you can just raise your hand on Zoom, and then we can call on you and you can ask a question. So anything relating to what has been covered till now, if you have any question on that, please go ahead. Or, OS, do you have anything to add to what, Zohaib has mentioned in terms of the importance of the few things that he has highlighted till now?
No, I think like most of what Zohaib mentioned is absolutely accurate. Incidentally, as he was going through the points, it made me recollect my time back when I was an undergraduate. So incidentally, I did an internship at an IIT, then did some research work with a professor that ended up getting published in IEEE, and so it just connects quite a bit. So like students, I'd say that just absorb as much as you can from what Zohaib is mentioning here, and learn and try to take notes, and feel free to just ask any questions that you have. Be comfortable asking anything you have, and we're here to help clarify any doubts.
Danish has his hand up. So Danish, can you just unmute yourselves, please, and ask your question?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Hello.
Go ahead.
My question was like, what if we do a research project that is totally different from the field that you want to do, like MSN? Like, let's say you are doing
Yep. So I can take that question, and OS, you can add to my thought. So this has happened with me. I mean, so my research during my second year, third year, I did my projects with a couple of professors, probably on digital electronics and some other field. And so what I would say is, professors, when they are looking at your application, they're not looking directly that, okay, this person has not done projects from my field, I'm not going to select it. what they are looking for is, do you have that mindset? Are you interested in, the thought process involved in a project is important, because you go through a problem, then you try to solve it. So I think what they are looking for is more around the thought process and how you are doing it and how you are solving the problem, rather than are you directly doing what they are doing. So even though if the research you are doing is very close to, if the project what you have done is very close to their research, that helps. But doing any other project on other field will also be helpful in your graduate application. OS, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that answers the question.
Yeah, let me add a little bit, Zohaib, if you're fine. Yeah. So the first thing to sort of understand is that almost anything that you do which adds to your resume can potentially be useful if it is meaningful work. Because there are two reasons why this is useful. First is, of course, it helps in getting admitted into a good university. But the second reason also is that most people do an MS because they ultimately want to get into the industry and do a job. And so even at the later stage when you are interviewing for companies, if you have done something meaningful, then that could potentially be useful during the interview process and can help you in terms of getting a good job. So anything that interests you, wherein you can get some guidance from some professor within your university, or if you can do an internship or research project on your own, anything that is meaningful that you can talk about can potentially be useful. Yes, Danish, your hand is up. Danish, no, okay.
Yes, I just wanted to ask. Yeah, my question was answered. That means we have to get involved in this research and all, just to get involved. They just want to see that, yeah, am I interested in this or not? That's what they are saying for.
Well, I mean, in the sense, you are better off doing something that interests you. If you can find somebody that can support you in that, I would anytime encourage you to work on something that interests you. Because many times the MS program, unless you're doing a PhD, in which case, again, the hope is that you will do a PhD in something that interests you. But otherwise, basically, people are looking for initiative. If you see a resume and there is some initiative, they see that this person tried to do a variety of things, that then it certainly helps you. And so instead of just spending time with your friends, wasting it, it is always good to look for avenues for self-improvement and work on something meaningful. So I think from that perspective also, it is important to build a case, and you have to start early. So if you are in your third years, you have to be looking at these things right now in terms of what you can do to improve your profile.
If I can briefly add, the idea of a graduate program is that you're going to be focusing on depth. And what you want to understand is the bachelor's program, you're focusing on breadth. You develop an interest which either happens during the 4 years of undergraduate curriculum or a couple of years after that. And you're now interested in pursuing and learning that in more detail. So for that, if you've figured out what you are interested in, being able to reach out to a professor and work on some research project will help build your case to the school that you're applying to. A lot of the times in these graduate programs, the professors, they receive their applications based on their areas of interest, and they're going to review your profile based on that. So if you have that alignment where you're interested in something, you've built a case for that, and the professor is interested, it just works out fine. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to do any research that you aren't interested in or you do not want to build a career. Try to find what interests you and then aggressively pursue. avenues by which you could do some research, which could be even just reaching out to a professor and saying that, hi, I'm interested in doing some voluntary work. Is there some data managing that I could do? And that'll get you in.
Yep, agree. Thank you, Ois, for elaborating, and thank you, Professor Ansari, for clarifying that. Should we move on, you think, Professor?
Yes, Zohaib, please move on.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, and I'll take pause in between as I suggested, like in a couple of more slides. So again, feel free to add questions to the chat window, even if the question is not very well framed. You just have thoughts on anything, any comment. If you want me to go a bit slow, feel free to add that to the chat window, and I'll try to reduce the pace or move faster, like whatever, based on your opinion. So as I mentioned, in my initial slide, that we are going to talk in detail about academics and GRE and get involved in research. We spoke about those things. Now I want to go to a section which is very important according to me, and this sometimes people ignore in terms of do not spend too much time on basically shortlisting universities. But I believe this is one of the most important thing in your, it's not directly related to your application package, but this is very important for your growth, where you need to find the right fit, where you need to join the right university, and where you need to apply to the right number of universities across the spectrum. So going into this section, first of all, what I want to talk about is what's the process of how we select a right research group in a field of study. So next few slides, we'll discuss an example scenario. For example, I want to apply, so consider me as a student, I want to apply to a master's or a PhD program. What should be the thought process? How should I select the right research group for my field of study? So a very traditional method, what most of the students, and I would say most of the people do, is they would do a Google search on best universities in USA for this program, or best universities in Canada for this program. So again, one thing I want to also emphasize is whatever I'm talking about here seems to be only USA, but these process, what I've talked about, GPA and research and all those things, are much relevant for Canadian graduate program as well. So I will, in the end of my presentation, I'll show you an analogy between US graduate application process and Canadian graduate application, but it's very similar. So keep that in mind. So going back to this presentation, if I want to select the right university or research group, I'll just do a Google search, best universities in USA for this program, or best universities in Canada for this program. And you'll get the top list, like all of these universities. And what you might do is, okay, I'm going to apply for in one of the top 10 universities. I'll apply to one of the between 20 to 40 ranking, one university, between 40 to 60, one university. And that's it. Like, that's how I determine 5 schools if I want to apply. I would be applying across the broad spectrum. I would say it's a fine way to search schools, but I would suggest a different strategy based on my experience. And the different strategy which I want to spend some time on is, first thing, before looking into this school, you should ask yourself these questions. First question is, what topic or unusual combination of topics interests me the most? So topic can be circuit design, as I said. But what we have seen in research these days, things are very interdisciplinary. Like, you will do research on combination of topics, and you might be interested in combination of topics. As I said, machine learning for medical applications, or circuits for image processing. So it hits 2 different topics: image processing as well as analog circuit design, and machine learning as well as biomedical applications. So these are some topics which are of interest to me. So think about that. You also want to think about what are the career opportunities after graduation. So sometimes, if you don't think about this, you might get disappointed where you do your master's in very theoretical subjects, and you will have to do PhD after you do a master if you're doing it on a theoretical subject, because there's not much career opportunity in that field. So you need to keep that in mind, what career opportunities I'm looking for. If you're interested in academia, then it's good. Like theoretical research, there's nothing wrong with that. If you are good with your master's in there, you can always apply for a PhD after that. But if you just want to do a master's, you will be looking for more career opportunities not related to heavy research and development. So you should look for topics which will have good career opportunities, and I'll explain to you how to look for those things. And then you should keep into mind salary expectations. So what salary am I expecting? So even in US, we have seen that salary, for example, in machine learning and data scientists these days are on a upward trend and are in heavy demand. And career for other and I don't want to point out what career, but they are not at the same level as data scientists or artificial intelligence. So naturally, salary are higher for those occupation compared to the other fields, but they are still not too much away from each other. But you can look into these things, and if these things are of importance to you, you should spend some time looking into and answering these questions before going into the research group. So I'll give you my example. And again, even though I'm going to talk about ECE, it is in no way only ECE. So if someone is from computer science background, they can just be interested in, as I said, artificial intelligence or machine learning, and can do the same process. But my interest, and right now what I'm working on, is RF engineering. I'm an RF engineer, and I'm a hardware guy. And even though I do interdisciplinary, I mean, I do coding and all those things, but my expertise and my skill set is around RF engineering. So when I was in undergraduate, I had great interest in analog design and CMOS designing and circuit designing, and so at that point, my example, if you consider, I'm interested in RF engineering or RF hardware design in terms of EC. So the first thing I'll do is, there are a lot of things where you can look into. First thing is LinkedIn, and based on our SETI mentoring sessions, we have had lots of session on LinkedIn profile and how to make your resumes and all those things. So using LinkedIn for doing job search is done pretty much, is very common here in US, Canada, and I'm assuming even in India, people use LinkedIn a lot. So they have a very good job search, and very you will get the list of jobs available for any occupation. So what I could do is go to jobs, LinkedIn jobs, just type RF engineering, and you can just give the location. So I'm interested in RF engineer, and I want to be in United States. So I'll look for what are the jobs available in United States. So as you can see, there are companies like Qualcomm, Microsoft, and Amazon, Facebook, Apple. They are hiring RF engineer, and this is in high demand as well. And I just did this search a week ago. So you can clearly see what are the requirements for these kind of job. There is another website called as Glassdoor, where you could look for salaries. So RF engineer salaries in United States. So these are very rough estimate. I would not say this changes a lot based on location to location, where you're located in United States, what exactly is your experience, what is your position. But what I'm suggesting doing this, why am I suggesting, is because this will give you an indication of what are the ranges of salary you will look for, which companies you can work after you're doing your master, after you're done with your masters and all those things. So it's good to have a rough idea of all of these things before proceeding and making sure that this is the research you want to go ahead with. Now comes the important part in terms of how to find a good research group. This is both important for masters as well as for PhD, where if you want to do a thesis-based master, you want to find a professor under which you can do a thesis. Google Scholar is another great website where they have a list of authors and professors and all the papers and all those things over there. So what you could do in Google Scholar is you could basically do a search on what fields are you interested in. So I'm interested in radio frequency electronic, right? So RF is a commonly known term when you're doing a search. So with this keyword of RF, I will start looking for professors who are doing radio frequency kind of research, and you can filter this by number of citations. So citations is something where if I am publishing a paper, if my paper is really good, some other, or if my paper is relevant to them, some other group who are also writing a paper, they will cite my paper. So this is some of a way, this is a way of indicate, like this is an indication that that professor is highly cited, means that his research is highly relevant. He's pretty well known in this academia. So it's a good indicator of how how heavily in terms of research the professor is involved with, how big his group is, and all those things. So this is one of the way where you could just so I'm putting RFO here. You could put machine learning, you could put data scientist, or if you're interested in some more niche kind of expertise, you could put those skill sets over there and you could do a search. Out of no reason, I'm interested in this professor Ali Niknejad. He is one of a very known researcher in this RF electronics. So I'm going to talk about now. For example, I have a list of professor. Randomly, I'm like, okay, I like this professor. Let me dig a bit deeper into this professor. Again, I want to emphasize that your success depends a lot on the success of your research group. So this is an important thing. You have to go through this procedure. Now, once I go to this professor, you can see the list of papers he has. And in the list, you can see his citations, you can see his publication records over the here. So these are all indicators whether the researcher is active or not, whether he is heavily cited or not, what is his H index. You don't need to know all these things, but you need to understand some of the professors are not with time, they are not heavily involved in research. And you can see an indication of that would be they would not be publishing papers, or the research group might have died down. This will be very much you can easily find it out when you're doing and repeating this process. So as you can see over here, I found his list of papers. I would suggest read some of their work. So read some of their heavily cited work and read some of their recent papers. And some of these journals are IEEE journals, which you might need license, and you can get access to that through university. Some of them are available as an open access journals, or even they might have published the papers on their website. So you don't need any license or anything for that. You can just go in and download the PDF, and so just look around their papers, read some of their work, and ask yourself that, do you want to do this for the rest of your master's program, or for the immediate career as well? So whether this is of interest to you. I would also suggest reading recent papers of their research group. So as you saw from the previous slide, their heavily cited papers are from 1998 or so. And you can see his research was more on inductor design and transformer design and so. But the more recent work, 2021, he is heavily publishing even in 2021. And now his research is more on CMOS receivers. And, so you would, just by looking at the paper, you will understand how the professor has evolved in his career. Like he started with this research and now he has migrated to this research, and this is his new research. Am I interested in doing this? So more or less, like the recent paper is what he's working on currently, and that can help you answer some of these questions. Again, I'm going to take a pause. I don't know whether there are questions, but Professor Ansari, do you want to have a look at the chat window if there are any? Or OS, do you, I'm not sure Professor Ansari, whether he's online, but can you have a look?
There's one question which basically, I guess they're asking the importance of a GRE score versus a GPA in terms of the application. Do you want to answer this first, or I think you have covered this?
Right. So I will I mean, I summarized that in my later slide, but only for the sake, because I covered a couple of slides related to GRE score versus GPA. There are minimum cutoffs for both GRE as well as GPA from each university, and those are the bare minimum cutoff. I would suggest that you should not aim for those minimum as your target GRE score or target GPA. No score is good enough for you to get admittance. So if someone asks me, tell me my GPA is this and my GRE score is this, will I get an admit to this university? No, no one can answer. It really depends on the application pool. It really depends on who else is applying. It really depends on some of your luck as well, whether there is vacancy in that research group or not. So there are a combination of factors like GPA, academics, your statement of proof, your recommendation letters, and all those things. So as a student in second or third year when you're applying, what I would suggest is just try to do your best in your GRE score, your GPAs, and all those things. Try to make your application package as suitable as possible for for the professors who are evaluating your application. And don't think too much about did I hit the minimum number, because there are a combination of factors which are not in your control, but whatever is in your control, you should work towards that. So yeah, is that the only question, OS?
There are a couple of more. There's one question on like LinkedIn and whether posting articles on that would help your chances.
So
or maybe like
posting,
networking. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. So LinkedIn, I would say what I have seen is, for example, even my professor, because I've seen him how he selects his student, and right now, I saw him. I have been out of academia, my research group since 5 years or so. But in my later half of the PhD, I was pretty close to the professor, and I was involved with him in terms of selecting students. So one thing, and I don't think it's relevant to all the universities or all the research group, but having a good LinkedIn profile will always help. And what I would say is, ultimately, they will see your application package, and that will be the only factor where they will judge you. But there might be a scenario where a research professor, if he's interested in you, he might ask you to have a conversation or a call. Before doing that, they might do a Google search on you, or they might look at you in LinkedIn and just try to see what things you have been doing. And so this might help, but I don't think this plays a big role, having publishing articles or so. But I would suggest just have your LinkedIn profile, because it's a good way of networking, and it's a good way of connecting to a prospective professor. Do you want to add anything to that, OS? Or
no, I think I agree with your points. I think it's not the most important thing, and focus on your overall package, but then making sure that you have an up-to-date LinkedIn profile is going to be useful. So keep that in mind as well. So the next question is, in MS, there are a variety of programs like cohort, research-based, project-based programs. Can you please clear the confusion between these programs?
Correct. So it's a good question, and I will touch that in my later slide. But just because the question was asked, I want to comment that my talk has been more on MS research and thesis-based program. In masters, there is course-based programs as well, where you're not actually doing research, but you're just doing a project during the course. The problem of that, and I would not say a problem, the issue of that is there's not much funding available for those course-based programs compared to thesis-based masters. And you will have to be a self-funding student, or you might have to do part-time job in order to cover some of those expenses. So in those cases, contacting a research group, and then research might not play a big weightage in your application. Like, it's always good to have research in your resume because that will always help you in getting an admit. But in those cases, department will be the one making choices for admission. So a professor might not be looking at your application. There would be a graduate selection committee who just looks at your application, good GPA, good this. Overall, you're a good student with some projects and so, and they will give you an admit and you'll do a course-based program. So some of the things which I'm talking might not be too relevant for a course-based program, but then what I would say is contacting a professor, even if you're doing a course-based program and you want to just do a project with them, and if a professor agrees that you're a good student and you can do a project with them, professor has, what I have seen, and I'm talking again from my experience, I actually got a reject from a university from which I did a PhD. So for example, I got a reject from the graduate selection committee. And then I contacted a professor and I'm like, I'm interested in working with you and stuff. And he read my application package. He was like, oh, you're a good fit. And then after a month, I got an admit from the same university. So they reversed the decision. So I would say professor has a very big role in this. So if a professor determines that you're a good student and he wants to work with you, they have a sway towards the application admission committee. As long as you have met the minimum criteria, it will always help your application. So even though for a course-based program, I will not say that research and all these processes I've shown might not be so relevant. It's always going to help. If you have it, then it will help in your application.
So just to add a little bit, there are a couple of questions that came on YouTube, Zohaib. This is being live streamed on YouTube for people who have a link. So one of the questions is it necessary to do research even for MS? So I guess here the focus is on programs wherein there is no thesis requirement. These are basically commercial programs which give you an MS. So that's one question. The second question is about targeting USA versus Canada as computer science engineers. And I think you are going to address Canada later, so we will, shelve the question for the time being. But regarding the question about whether research is necessary even for an MS, if you and OS can answer that, that would be useful.
Sure. So I indicated that, Professor Ansari, just now. Like for masters, what the question was indicating was a course-based program versus thesis-based program. So you have course-based program, you have thesis-based program. For course-based program, research might not be too important and too relevant because your department or a graduate selection committee determines whether you should get an admit instead of a professor or a research group really putting in emphasis on those things. So I would say research is not too important for a course-based program, but there are disadvantages of course-based program over a thesis where funding becomes an issue. You will have to be a self-funded student or do a part-time job to support part of your expense. So that's one of the disadvantages, I would say. But as long as you are able to fund yourself and you're interested in just course-based program, then there will not be much emphasis on research. But I would still say that, in order to distinguish your application from other applicants, people are doing projects these days during their third year, second year. So just to distinguish them yourself, I would say it's not going to harm your application. So it's always good to have that skill set in your resume that you have done these projects, these internships, but in the course of your master's program, you will not be involved in research at that point. You will be just doing your courses and probably just do a small project with, professor, something on that direction.
So just to, OS, do you have anything to add to that?
Sure. I would say basically, if you are thinking of doing a PhD, then and you are research oriented, apply for the thesis-based programs. If you are thinking of industry, go for a project-based program. And there's always a matter of funding. So what you have to do is before you're applying to any university, make sure that the university has teaching assistantship opportunities, RA opportunities for graduate students, irrespective of what they choose. And it's more often than not in the university website, this information is listed. So if you see that and the funding is okay and you are interested in just going for industry, then a project-based program might be sufficient for you. But if you are uncertain and if you want to do academia, you want to do a PhD, then go for a research base. So that would be
so I think knowing the audience, most people would obviously be interested in getting a job after doing an MS. So I think from the viewpoint of doing research before the MS, just to improve the chances of an MS, my advice to you would be to do research in an area that is going to be valuable to you even after the MS in terms of getting a job. Or yes, do research in an area wherein you can do an RA shape if possible once you are doing your MS. So again, data science opportunities are good ones. You know, if you can learn some good data science skills, maybe potentially it could help you in getting some RA shape or TA shape. And certainly if you want to have a CS role afterwards, I think certainly, you know, having some projects or experience in data science could potentially be useful. So for those who are in your third year or fourth year, I would advise you to sort of, you know, think of doing some, you know, either project or research based on some sort of a data science skill set. Two hands are up. Fifa has her hand up and Malik has her hand up. So Zohaib, do you want to take questions now or do you want to move ahead and then take questions?
I think some of the questions are related to, again, funding and all those things, right? So I will explain teaching assistantship, research assistantship, what OS was indicating, like, you know, in my latest slide. So I think we can move on and we can go back to the question after the next pause. So probably that might work well.
Sure, I think makes sense given the, you know, that we are at 12. So we are 1 hour into the thing. So let's just do
sure. Okay, let's do that. So continuing to where we left. So where we left was reading research paper, recent papers of the research group and all those things. Other thing what I would encourage again is once you're interested in any research group, you should look into the size of the research group. So go to the professors, go to their website, go into things like what is the current graduate student size, who are the students, whether the group is like how established are the past group members in academia or industry. So again, like a course-based master, you could do jobs in company or industry. That is even applicable for thesis-based masters or even a PhD. So I have a PhD, but I am working in a company, although I work in a corporate research lab. So I do research, but I still work in a company. So your options of career is pretty much wide open in at least in United States, where you can basically, you might have done master's, course-based master, thesis-based master, and you can still find a job both in industry, but for academia, you need a PhD. So what you're seeing over here is you should look into the previous graduate student. You should look into how established are the past group members in academia or industry. And then I would suggest just looking into the current graduate student, how diverse the group is. I think that is important as well, because if you're doing a research, you need to understand whether the group is diverse enough that you can collaborate. So what I've seen is some of the professors have their research groups who are very much geared toward just one community. And I would not encourage selecting such a professor. And the reason is because what I've seen from my experience, the more the diverse group is, you're able to collaborate in a better manner. And so that's my suggestion. And one of the example I did going through my analogy was I looked into the previous student from this professor, Ali Niknejad. I looked at some of his students, and one of his students was Amin Arbabian. And I was like, okay, just do a Google search on him. I'm going to find out what is he doing now. So he did his PhD 10 years ago. It's been a long time. I want to see whether he's working in an industry or academia, or is he doing something else? And just by looking at him, I found that, oh, he's now a professor and he has a pretty well-established research group himself. So this shows that, whatever research is being done by this professor is so highly relevant, and the members who are graduating from his group are moving on and advancing in their career, going in academia, working in companies like Apple, Microsoft, like good multinational companies. So this will always be helpful, like in terms of selecting a research group. So one thing, again, this is not too relevant for course-based master, but just for the sake of completion of this search and people who are still interested in doing a thesis-based master or PhD, what I would suggest is in United States, there is most of the professors are funded by something called as National Science Foundation. And there is a website of National Science Foundation where you could just look for professors, what is their funding, what have been they working on, what are their recent funding. So this will give you a very, very good indication about how well funded the research group is, and when is their budget, when is their funding going to expire. So from my experience, labs that are usually well funded do not have to worry much about research assistantship. So research assistantship, I'm going to talk about in my later slide, is something when you're a thesis-based student, you can work in a lab as a research assistant and you're getting paid for that monthly. You're helping drive a project or something like that. So in this case, the professor is Ali Niknejad. So I just went to this website, typed his name, did a search, and just found that, oh, he very, very recently, he has been awarded this $450,000 on this project on something related to medical imaging using analog circuits. So this might be something of interest to me. And this can also help me in writing my statement of purpose, where I will gear my statement of purpose towards research related to medical imaging, or if I'm interested in this or not, or even showing your professor that, okay, I have gone through your papers and I know you're working on this, and I am also interested in this research. So that shows to a professor how passionate you are in terms of working under him or working in his research group. So these are some of the things I will recommend doing. It's not, again, too relevant for course-based master, but I would suggest doing this for thesis-based master, or if your ultimate objective is PhD as well. So next thing I want to talk about is once you're done, you have determined this is the professor, he works in this graduate school, and this is the research group. So I now know his school is this. So he's working in University of California, Berkeley. UC Berkeley is his school. So what I would do is I will visit a graduate school and the department. So basically do a Google search, go to their website of this university, go to their graduate school and department, and then I'll start looking for application prerequisite. So look for the application prerequisite. Also look for faculty, whether the faculty members are diverse or not. So why I'm suggesting this is, this professor is working on analog circuit design. If he is the only professor in the university working on analog circuit design, most of the other professors are on some other field. There are just one or two professors working on analog circuit design. That's a red flag to me. And the reason it's a red flag to me is because I will always look for faculty, whether the faculty members are diverse or not. The reason is things happen, and things happen as in there is a chance that you might have to move to another professor. So things happen in terms of, in my experiences, if a person is even doing master's 2 years, he joins a university and the professor decides that he is moving on to some other university, or something happens. You are not in good terms with that professor, or you do not like his working style. If you have other professors working in similar research, you can always talk to the other professor and move on. You have that flexibility of switching from different professors, switching to different research group. But if the faculty is not diverse, then you lose that option. So I would suggest going to the graduate school, looking at the faculty profiles, looking at all of those things. These are some of the important things to be done. So after you're done with that, so now you have determined what research group is good for you. You have determined they have good funding or not. You have also determined from their graduate school page what are the application prerequisites. So those are the minimum prerequisites you need to satisfy. And you have determined whether the faculty is diverse or not, and all those things. Next thing would be make contact with prospective professors. So I cannot emphasize enough how important this is for research-based program, or MS thesis-based, or if your ultimate objective is doing a PhD as well. I would say this is optional for a course-based program, master's, but this will always help. Like, it will not go against you in an application. So even if you're doing a course-based program, you're interested in some topic, some professor, you should do this. And prerequisite for this, according to me, is you should be familiar with the research of the professor. You should have researched the individual, went through their profile and all those things. So some of the do's I would suggest is use the information you have collected by reading the faculty profile, papers, funding, etc. And do a directed email. So a well-drafted communication will always help you get the faculty's attention. So use the information that you have collected from all reading the paper and doing all of these things, and how the faculty research fits with your interest, how your past research experience helps. So write a very directed email to them, and try to keep the email short. Like, faculty receives lots and lots of emails. Like, I know my professor used to receive, like, during the admission period around December and January, he receives sometimes like 50 emails a day or 60 emails a day. So they do not have that much time to go through and read all the emails. So keep it very short, keep it very directed. I would say this might not be too important for MS program, as I said, for course-based program. However, if a professor likes you and knows you, that that will always help you in your application and admission process. And I would again emphasize that professors have significant power during admissions. So if they like you and they want you in their research group, I do not see a graduate selection committee rejecting an application. As long as you have meet the requisites, if a research group or a professor likes you, you will get an admit. So this is from my experience, what I've seen. Again, I'll take a pause again. My next sections will be now more on the application package, what the package should look like. But I wanted to spend so much time on the universities and shortlisting and so on and so forth. Should we take question now, or should I again move on and take question at that time?
Professor? No, I think, Zohaib, we should just move on, and, because we have, interest of time, let's move on quickly through the next thing and then take questions.
Okay, yeah. That
because
makes
I think
sense.
the next set of things are most relevant for people who want to do an MS and get into the industry. So I think let's focus on that.
Sure. Okay, let's do that then. So now I'm going to spend time on the application package. So what factors are almost always considered for admission? And this is both for MS and PhD, or MS course, MS thesis. These factors are in your control, and this is what makes your application package. First thing is GPA, academia, academics. Then GRE is very, very important. I cannot emphasize enough how important GRE scores are. And TOEFL, IELTS score are important, but not to that degree as GRE. Recommendation letters from the professor, statement of purpose, and then your research or relevant professional experience. So you need to mention that in your personal statement or your CV. And the last thing I would say is funding. So how much funding is possible from that university, whether they have an opening, whether you are a fit to a research group if you're doing a thesis base. If not, still, if there are openings, enough openings, and whether you're a fit to that department or university. So these are the factors important. I'm going to spend time on each of these things now and talk about how to make a good package. So for letter of recommendation, you will have to ask people to write you letter of recommendation. So again, from my experience in India, I have seen letter of recommendation in India is usually written by you, and the professor signs it if he agrees on the content. So over here, usually a professor just writes by himself, and you will not even see what he has written in the recommendation letter, but that's not the case in India. So what I would suggest is make a draft, write a good recommendation letter, ask, and then go to a professor and then ask letters from people with whom you have had more than a casual contact. So not just like, so some of the example are good sources of letter of recommendation is research and faculty advisors are good sources. Poor sources is your friend, relative, graduate student. These are not like the right people to write you recommendation of letter. So you should always go and talk to a professor whom you have worked with in terms of a research project, or someone who knows you, someone who has you have done a course and that has good GPA with him, and you have some experience with him. So yeah, so these are the sources in terms of, and I would always suggest, this is not like you write a recommendation of letter and just go and give it to them. You need to get it proofread by other people. So you need to do some revision. So always start early with these kind of things. The second thing is statement of purpose. So for statement of purpose, I would suggest a couple of things. So statement of purpose, you have to tailor your statement of purpose to the program and the target research group you're applying to. So even for course-based program, you need to write the statement of purpose. It might not be towards a targeted research group, but it might be towards a graduate program which you're applying to. So why are you applying to that program? What attracts you to the program? What will you offer to the program? What are the short and long-term career goals? And you need to mention specific faculty of interest to you. And I would again say it would be great if you had contact with a faculty. You can mention that in the statement of purpose that you're interested in working with this faculty, if that faculty has given you a reply. And I would still say that statement of purpose should be different for different universities or different research groups. And you should not be like, I have one statement of purpose, I'm applying to 7 universities. I'm going to send all the to all the 7 universities the same statement of purpose. So it should be different for different universities. You should tailor it instead of sending one SOP to all the universities. And I would say that mentors over here can always help in proofreading this statement of purpose. So feel free to contact me if someone is interested in applying. I can always proofread, or you can ask your mentors to do the proofreading. So we are always there for you to, we are always there for helping you guys and everyone who are interested in applying. So some of the do's and don'ts for statement of purpose, I would say, is write clearly and concisely and use concrete example. And you should ask someone to critique and read it aloud, multiple revisions. So you cannot make this in probably one revision. So you need to, you need to have multiple revisions and change it based on other people's comment and suggestions and all those things. Some of the don'ts for statement of purpose, and I would suggest these based on my experience. I was actually involved in some of the graduate selection process when I was doing my PhD with my professor. I've seen from my experience from statement of purposes, people make up things, and it's easy to understand that people are making up things and no one appreciates that. So please don't make up things in your statement of purpose, and don't write an autobiography that I was in this city and I'm this, and like, they want to know more about how you're well suited for this program. So you can talk about your background, but not in the sense of giving details about you, and don't treat this as an autobiography, and don't make excuses for bad scores. So from my experience, I've seen sometimes people are like, oh, I was not feeling well, and this happened, and that's why I have this score. But then this happened. So to an extent, it might be okay, but it's easy to make out if people are making excuses and making, putting that in the statement of purposes. So don't try to do these things for your statement of purpose. So one last slide before I move to the questions and before I move to the application timeline is funding. So there are multiple options for funding. First thing is self-funding. When I would say self-funding is you do not need any funding from universities, or you're not hoping to get any fund. And the reason could be you're applying for a course-based program where fundings are really difficult to get. So if you have the money and do not require assistantship, or you can take a loan, self-funding is the easiest. However, for most of us, that might not be the case. So what I would suggest, and for course-based program, self-funding and part-time job is the big option, where you can partly self-fund, take a loan, and do some part-time job. So on your student visa, you're allowed to do certain hours a week on campus jobs during the course of semester. And during summers, you can do full-time job as an internship or something like that. So you can do a combination of self-funding plus part-time job for a MS course-based program. Even if you are in a course-based program, sometimes you can also apply for assistantship through a department. And some of the assistantship options are teaching assistantship. So teaching assistantship, the requirement for that is you need to have done previous courses related to that teaching assistantship. So for example, if you are a TA for an undergraduate course on analog electronics, a second year undergrad course, which is in a US university, you should have taken courses in that. You should have good grades in the similar courses. You should have done lab work for that course. And then you should indicate that in your application that I want to apply for teaching assistantship, even though I am applying for a course-based master. For thesis-based master, it becomes relatively easier to get teaching assistantship. But even for a course-based master, you can indicate that in your application package. You can also indicate that when you're contacting a professor that even though I'm applying for a course-based master, I'm interested in this research, and I would still like to apply for teaching assistantship. And do you have any vacancy for the oncoming semester or something like that? So this always helps. And the other option I would say is research assistantship. This is much more relevant for thesis-based program or for PhD. But I would still suggest take your chance, write well-structured emails, relate to their research, and attach your resume. So if you have done relevant research in a research group and they're looking for some research assistant to help them in part of the project, that is one of the funding options you can get. And you should talk to them. You should write and suggest that to the prospective professors over here. So again, question, I'm not going to stop here. I'll stop for the next question slide, because that's the end of my US application process. And then I'll move to the Canadian comparison. So in terms of applying, again, I would emphasize why you need to apply early. The reason is stuff happens. You would have a timeline in your mind that I'm going to finish my application and submit everything by November of this year. But stuff happens. So when I say stuff happens, your application package might not be complete, or your professor forgot to mail a recommendation letter. So in my case as well, I know that 3 professors had to mail a recommendation letter to the university. So when I say mail, it's like online submission of a letter. They need to submit it and hit the submit button. But I was not able to contact my professor, and my package was not complete. And I kept on insisting, like, oh, can you please submit it? And so, you need to keep a buffer in order to make sure these things do not happen. And even if they happen, then you still have a good amount of buffer. And then the other thing I would say is be prepared for application fees. So each university has application fees which generally run from $50 to $100, depending on whatever university and whatever program you're applying to. Some school will waive the fee based on letter from a college around financial needs. So I've seen this happen a lot. So don't hesitate to ask. Like if you feel like you do not have that much money to cover the cost of application fee, you can always indicate financial difficulty you're facing and what would be required. They indicate that in their graduate application process. And sometimes they require a letter from your college saying that you are in financial need. And the graduate school will waive the fee if you get such a letter like that. The last slide I have around the US application process is on the application timeline. So the thing I would suggest is this is a timeline pre-COVID. So what as you can see, I've taken this from one of the blog of a student who applied for this year's fall admission. So fall of 2021, which is getting admitted to September of 2021. So what is the takeaway from this slide is whatever is indicated over here is you cannot defer the date any further. So for example, what is indicated over here is send applications and other documents by November of 2020 or November to 2020 to December to 2020. So this is the final date which you have to send your application. I would still recommend to do the action items at least 1 to 2 months before, as indicated in this timeline, just to keep that additional buffer. And one of the example I've said earlier, like send application and other documents should be done by October and latest by November. This is what I did for my package. As you can see, first thing is preparing GRE TOEFL. You need to prepare at least 3 to 4 months, depending on how much time you have invested and so on and so forth. And once you are doing that in parallel, you should start beginning your preparation for statement of purpose, recommendation letters, and all those things which are required in your packages. You should start contacting professors around September, October, those timeline. And October, November is the time when you should take the test and send your documents around November, December, or so on and so forth. And the timeline to get an admit is around February to March or so on. And then if you're getting admitted to September, your pre-departure formalities is around May or so. Now I understand because of COVID, things have moved a bit. But for a third year student, for admission process, so if you're a third year student in ECE or CS, for admission process, when you apply around October or November, graduate school will consider only your third year first semester GPA. So all the grades until third year first semester will be considered in your application process, and in order for them to judge whether you should get an admit. So they will not be considering third year, second semester, and fourth year, first semester. Those will be after you get an admit, you still need to show them that you have completed your degree and all those things. So if the third year, first semester exam didn't happen because of the COVID and things like that, you may not have the transcripts by then for the third year, first semester. But you can always mail the graduate admission office, tell them about what's happening in India, and this is a special case. And they might still give you a conditional admission based on that. And they might have a different set of rule in that scenario. So what I would say is there's a lot of flexibility in US and Canada. Your emails will be replied. So don't hesitate to ask, tell them these are the things happening, but try to follow this timeline and try to do this at least 1 to 2 months before as indicated over here. And I know everyone might have questions on this. So I will take a pause now to answer any questions. So yeah, Professor Ansari.
1 second. Yeah, there's a question. Malik has a question. Can you ask Malik quickly?
Yeah, so am I audible?
Yeah,
Yep.
you are.
All right. So the thing is, I mean, the funding slide just passed by. So my question was, um, my main focus before this session was on course-based masters. I did not even know much about research-based masters. So I've always heard from different people as such by a word of mouth that whatever money you invest for masters, you can earn it back when you go there, and you by earning part time or such. So I wanted to have a clarity on this about self-funding plus part-time. So does this really happen, and uh, how long does it take for you to earn back whatever you've invested for your studies there?
Correct.
What do you
So
want to
does
do, Malik? Just one question. Sorry, Zohaib. What do you
yeah,
want to
good.
do? You want to do an MS in computer science? What is your
MS in computer science, yes.
Okay. Zohaib, yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. So master based, so course based master, thesis based master are two options. So I agree to an extent that initially you need to probably because when you are moving to a new country, you would need money to sustain yourself for a couple of months, and even for your visa, process. When you are applying for a US visa, you go through an interviewer. If you have a master based course based master, they know that you're not a funded student. They will ask you specific questions around how are you going to fund yourself. So for those scenario, people take loan and people say that, okay, I have this much money in my bank account and I'm going to do this and this. Ultimately, you will be able to repay back. If you're doing, I didn't do self-funding plus part-time job based on my experience, but I know some of my friends who have done course-based master. Uh, During summers, you can apply for internships and basically earn money in that manner. And you can also do on-campus jobs, administrative jobs, in order to support yourself. I would still go to OS probably. You might have some suggestions on whether you are able to completely, at what time will you be able to remove 100% of that financial burden, like whether it will take a couple of years after you graduate or so for self-funding plus part-time.
Sure. I would say, if you are going to apply to a master's program, the first thing that you have to do is understand what you can afford. And in the US, you've got public universities versus private universities. The tuition for a public university is substantially low when compared to a private university, which could be almost double. Like if you're thinking of an MS in CS, you could be paying 45,000 to 50,000 in a year versus maybe 80,000 in a year. And in some programs, maybe 35,000 in a year. So what you have to do is assess what you can afford. Another recommendation that I'd have for students is ideally work for a year or two. This is sort of what I did, and try to save up as much as you can so that you could bring that along and pay for your initial sort of semesters. Along with that, look for teaching assistantships and research assistantships and apply for them, reach out to professors, volunteer for research labs. That's kind of how I approached it. The first semester, I was able to save up money from my 1 year at Deloitte. And then I reached out to a professor and volunteered to work for him. He liked the work. And then the next semester, he was able to give me a teaching assistantship that paid both a stipend as well as for the fee as well to a certain extent. I use the stipend to pay the rest. The last resort, I would say, is unless you really need to, would be to do the part-time job, because right now you are doing your master's. I've seen a lot of folks, what they end up doing is they come to the US, they're doing their graduate program, and then in order to support themselves, they're looking to do part-time jobs, that eats up a lot of time. Graduate programs are no easy jobs. It's going to take up a lot of time. And if you want to learn well, it's an investment in your future. So in terms of earning back, if you do an MS in CS, at the end of the first year, if you do a internship, you'll probably earn close to, for the 3-month period, $25,000 on average. I could look into that further, but if you get into a tech company, 20,000 to 25,000 is something that you could earn and you could pay back. And if you're able to convert it full time, within a year, depends on how you save it, you should be able to repay what you have. So what you should do is prepare well, that you are financially sort of stable during this period of 2 years or 1.5 years, so that you can fully invest in your masters and do that really well, so that that will repay you at the end, rather than doing not as great a job and then at the end of 2 years not being able to find a good job.
So I think one important thing here, I mean, I'll try to be quick, is this internship that Uwais is talking about at the end of the first year, this summer internship, which can be a very well-paying opportunity. In order to do well in that internship, you have to again go through that entire rigmarole of the interviewing process and your data structures, algorithms, all the stuff that we have been emphasizing in this program will be relevant. So one way to make sure that you are able to repay whatever you have sort of spent on your MS program is to work on those types of things also right now, so that the moment you enter your MS, and once you start sort of, applying for internships, you are well prepared and you don't have to sort of, worry so much. So that's another aspect of, preparing ahead of time so that you are able to get a job or an internship afterwards. The other thing is that there are certain scholarships that are available. Those who are in Hyderabad, there are some minority scholarships that are available for certain sections of students and society. There are also other foundations that are available in India which give out scholarships. So you need to sort of look at these to see what all are possibilities, and you need to apply to as many of them as possible, so that if you can get some funding, it may be possible to reduce the financial burden.
Thank you so much.
Let's go ahead then. I don't know, is there any other questions? Can you apply for TAs right in the first semester of my MS, is one question from Sophia.
I don't think so, right? I'm not, OS, do you want to take this again? Because I'm not sure about US, but at least in Canada, in the first year, they did not allow to apply for TA.
This also varies from university to university. So if you go to a university space, they'll say that graduate students are allowed teaching assistantships. Some students who have demonstrated sort of the ability to do research and have already started communicating with professors, sometimes will have that opportunity in the first semester. But more often than not, you'll find that students, once they've come to the US, they've established themselves for a semester, reached out and developed interactions with their professors, can get it during their second semester. So it varies from university to university. I would say if you've gotten admit before you move to the US, feel free to reach out to a professor and see if there are opportunities. And you might have done an undergraduate course in India, which you do really well, and you could be a TA for that in your first semester, like Introduction to Programming or something around those lines.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's another question, which is more preferable, public or private university? So again, that's something that OS can answer maybe.
I would say, like, for me, I ended up doing at a public university, which was University of California, San Diego. And your decision should be driven by both, like, your financial situation as well as who do you want to work with. If you are particularly interested in a professor who does really well and you get a great opportunity at a great private school, you should not leave that opportunity. An example would be if you end up getting into Stanford or a Columbia or a Cornell, and you have a great professor that you want to work with, that will set you up for life. So that's kind of the decision. If otherwise you find that you are interested in working with, there are a lot of very good public schools as well that are doing really good research. Yeah. And you will find, if you're able to find the right match, go for that.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say that, if you can get into a good public university that is, very good from the financial perspective of tuition, etc. So the University of California system, the University of Texas system, Michigan University, some of these are great universities. And so if you can get into any of these, you will get an excellent education as well as great opportunities for jobs later on. So you should certainly think of those and apply there. Okay, so there are some more questions. If we get an internship while doing MS, will university force you to give your salary to them for credits apart from fees? Okay.
No, this won't happen. Don't worry about it. No. You'll probably do your masters in your summer break after your first year. So nobody's going to take your money. Don't worry.
Exactly.
Does the university help finding an internship or a job?
I can answer that first, and OS, you can add on to that, because being in 3M, we do apply a lot, and we do work with other universities for that. So at least companies I know, they have recruiting, and they go every summer or they have career fairs, and we go to different universities and we do it's basically like a placement in India, where you have campus interviews. It's like that, where the universities go in and we try to identify the right candidates, and we do offer them internship. Our motivation when we offer internship is we want to convert that intern candidate to a full-time candidate. So we the selection criteria is like that, based in our mind. So I would say university plays a big role. Like if you are from a good university, then a company will go over there, and it increases your chances of getting an internship. OS, you can add to that.
Yeah, from my perspective, one thing that I would recommend all students to do is search whether the university has a full-fledged sort of career fair that happens every semester. Like you will find some universities where 300 companies are visiting every semester. And what happens is when that career fair exists, you have a whole support system around that the university builds, which there's a career center where you could go and have your resume reviewed. You could get guidance on how to interview. You could get guidance on like group sessions, and companies visit, like Zohaib, I mentioned that they'll come and give a presentation and a talk at the university. So keep that in mind. I would say make an Excel sheet, put a list of all your universities and make criteria just to see if all of these are satisfying what you're looking for. And if you end up making something like that, just feel free to share it with the group, might be beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
Okay, there's a question. Afifa has her hand up. So can you ask Afifa, unmute and ask quickly?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Alaikum salam.
Question, sir. I would like to know, I would like to take a suggestion from you. I'm an ECE student, and we have many fields to do masters in communication as well, and other Verilog, BHGL, anywhere we can get many courses. So I would like to know that which course would be more preferable, like the one that will interest me more, or the one that is more in demand.
So yeah, it's a good question. I would say it's a balance between everyone is different. I would say for me, at least, it was a balance between both. Like you might be interested in a course where career-wise, it might be a stagnant field. So for example, analog electronics is not really advancing at the pace as RF electronics and RF and chip designing. So, you need to keep both in mind. So as I indicated in my earlier slides, where like, if you're interested in Verilog designing or VHDL, you should start looking into companies who are looking for that skill set, and like, what are the expected salaries, whether you can get internships with that skill set. Keep that in mind, as well as you should also look into a couple of years from now how the fields are evolving, like, whether you will have good jobs related to that skill set in the future or not. So again, there's no simple answer to that question. I would say it's a balance between both. Did I answer your question, Afifa?
We can also take it offline. So she is from ECE, so maybe you can be of use there. Also, I think Dr. Allabash Naikodi, I think his daughters also did an MS from the US, so maybe he can also, I know he's also from ECE, so he could also potentially be useful there. I think we need to move on because we are well into this thing. So if you can just quickly, move through your presentation, and then we will end soon, inshallah, in 15 minutes.
Okay, yeah, let's do that then. So, yeah, so my next section, and this will be quick, because most of the learnings we have done is applicable for Canada as well. So it's a very similar application process. I know many people who apply both to Canada and US, and they do not need to spend any extra effort in order to apply for either of them. So if you have prepared for your graduate application process for US, then you can use probably small honing, like, changing things here and there. You can use the same package for Canada as well. So just to give you an overview of Canada, Canada has multiple world-class universities, and these are some really good universities. So for example, Canada has many provinces, as you can see over here. Each of the province has some very reputed universities. So for example, British Columbia, UBC, University of British Columbia, is a well-known university. University of Toronto, Waterloo, University of Waterloo is very well known. University of Alberta is very well known in Alberta. McGill is very well known. So these are some of the universities which are in top 100 world ranking, and even to an extent top 20. So University of Toronto is top 20, consistently rated top 20 for engineering, or so on and so forth. So this is a good option. The thing what I want to talk about is why should you study in Canada versus US. So some of the reasoning behind why in Canada versus US, and not just comparison purposes with US, but just in general, why study in Canada is because there are world's top academic institutes, and I indicated some of them being Toronto, Waterloo, UBC, Alberta, McGill. So these are some really good universities. It's much easier to get a visa in Canada versus US. So the visa interview process, application process, when I say visa, I mean student visa process, is much quicker and much easier compared to US. The tuitions are more affordable. So you will see that. So for example, if you're not getting enough funding, if you're applying for a course-based program, and I mean, OSBI indicated how you can circumvent that, you can apply for assistantship. But if you don't want those factors, and you're just looking for more affordable tuition fees and probably just paying by yourself, and you want your living expense to be lesser, generally Canada has much affordable tuition compared to US. Like if you just compare dollar by dollar amount, their work permit system is much more open. And here the immigration process in US is, I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone has gone through it. We have gone through multiple change in visa statuses, applying for this, and then lottery system. And so it's a big hassle. If you want to apply for permanent residency, I mean, it's worth the hassle in US, but still, if you do not want that stress in terms of immigration, Canada is much better in terms of work permit policy and immigration opportunities. And Canada is more multicultural compared to US in terms of multiple communities with different countries, and even the population over there, you will see when you visit, it's very multicultural. So some of the comparison with US, the admission process is very, very similar to USA. So I would say if you have prepared an application package for US and you want to apply to Canada and you want to apply to some of the top universities, you can use most of the thing you have prepared for the USA package, and you do not have to do anything differently. So if you want to keep a balance, I will suggest just do it both for US and Canada if Canada is an option for you. The research opportunities, again, it vary based on the field. Canada, a couple of things are pretty hot. So for example, technology and electronics and ECE. University of Waterloo is well known for CS and ECE based engineering program. There are, if you're interested in chemical engineering, University of Alberta is very well known for chemical engineering, mainly because they have petroleum around and mostly chemical related industries around. So I mean, it varies a lot based on the field. You have to do some research on what universities is well known for what field, what are the job opportunities, and so on and so forth. The tuition fees are much cheaper in Canada compared to US. I indicated that earlier. The housing and living expense is relatively cheaper. So just considering Canadian dollar is like conversion wise as well, Canadian dollar is lower than the US dollar. Just by that sense as well, the housing and living expense will be much cheaper. And job opportunity wise, I would still say US is much better in Canada compared for higher studies, after higher studies, if you're looking for jobs. But there are good job opportunities in CS and ECE in Canada. You need to do some research before applying in terms of where you're applying, whether you can find good internships around, what's the job scenario, what are the students doing now who have graduated from their group. So you need to spend some time doing that. But yeah. And the last thing I would say is immigration in Canada is much easier than USA, which I indicated earlier as well. If your ultimate objective is you want to apply for permanent residency and be a citizen of some other country, then Canada is much easier and much faster compared to USA. They do not have those huge backlogs, and because of the open work permit and how the immigration is dealt with, the country is much more friendlier, immigration friendlier than USA. So this is my final slide, and these are the summary and tips based on the whole presentation. Again, I cannot emphasize enough that you need to start early. This is not a thing where you can be like, I want to apply for graduate studies and you can be done with everything in next month. You need to prepare for it, mainly in terms of even doing projects and preparing your package, reference letter, GRE. So there are multiple things which I showed. You need to start early and apply early. Try to follow the application timeline, which I showed in one of the slides, and try to do it at least a couple of months before the application timeline, what was suggested in that slide. GRE score is very important, and I indicated that earlier. The other important thing is do not apply to only top schools. So you might be looking into schools and you might be interested in good schools which are well known. So I would suggest apply to high, mid, and relatively low ranked universities just to keep a balance, so that even if you have a good GPA, even if you have good reference letter, there is a chance that you might be rejected by the top school. So you need to keep your options open. So apply to all different kind of universities. I have also seen sometimes even applying to a mid-level university with a good GRE and GPA score, your chances of funding is much higher than applying to a top-level university. So yeah, that basically is important. The other thing is contact your professors before applying. This is more relevant for research and master's thesis-based program and for PhD, but I think this is important even for a course-based program. So if possible, contact professors which you're interested in. Keep your communication brief, concise, and quantitative instead of just going in lengths around other things. And last thing is your career prospects does not just depends on admission to university. So for example, if you get into like like good universities like UC Berkeley or something on that sense. Like that doesn't mean that your career is set and you don't have to worry. Performance and collaborative research, etc., how you do in the courses plays a major role. So your life and your internship and your job in USA will depend a lot about how you perform in those universities. So these things are very important. So that's it. From me.
Yeah. So we will try to wind up quickly. There is a question which I am not sure whether we can answer, but let's try. Is what is your opinion about MS in UK instead of going to the USA or Canada? So, does anybody want to take that question? Wes?
UK, not very certain right now with Brexit sort of still in flux. I don't know about the work permit situation, how it works. I would say in terms of opportunities even after masters as well in UK are limited from what I've seen in personal interactions, but this is something I should probably do a bit more research. Maybe I could spend maybe 10 minutes just searching things and putting in the chat on UK versus Canada.
Yeah.
But
so
right now,
my thinking, just to sort of add to Wes, again, this is not based on any significant knowledge about this. Anytime you have an option between the US and Canada versus UK, I would anytime prefer US versus Canada and Canada over UK. I mean, both from a immigration perspective and also from money and all those other perspectives. I think in
yes,
anytime the US and Canada would be preferable to UK. I think so.
yes. One small point to add, I just remembered, like the real estate in UK is cost of living is more expensive and the salaries are lower. So that's definitely a point to keep in mind versus the US and Canada. Sorry?
Yeah, and also with Brexit, UK is no longer part of EU. So, one big advantage is to a certain extent nullified. Afifa is asking a question. Yes, Afifa.
Yes, sir. Like you said, that GRE is very much important and we cannot take any risk regarding any exam. So I would like to know that can I do the preparation at home itself, or should I have to take any coaching, etc., or can I write mock test and improve in it? And secondly, I would also like to know the validity of GRE, like other IELTS and other these exams. They have validity of 2 to 3 years like that. So, what is the validity of this GRE score?
Yep. So I can take that question and OS, you can add to it. So as far as I know, validity of GRE is more than TOEFL IELTS. It's 5 years. So I would suggest you can give the GRE exam, and even if you're in second year, if you are prepared, you can give the GRE exam and can use that score for your application process after 2 years. Regarding preparation of GRE, I know most of the people and even students have scored like 334, 336 out of 340. I would say majority of them were home prepared. Like, I mean, everyone has done preparation in their home, giving mock tests, going through so the biggest bottleneck in GRE, at least for Indian students I've seen, and including me, when I was in India, was verbal. So our quantitative math is much better. So I spent like 70% or even 80% of my time on verbal, preparing the word list, giving mock tests. A lot of mock tests is essential, I would say, like practicing and practice is very important. But unless you think you're lagging in something and you need coaching for that, I would suggest preparing in your home by yourself.
I would agree
Anything?
with
Yeah.
what Zohaib I mentioned. Like most often than not, the centers that you attend for GRE, what they'll do is they'll familiarize you with the pattern. What they're going to say is that this is the test, these are the set of questions, and like what what you have to do is be able to prepare by yourself. I think there's a lot of hard work that you'll have to put in for this, especially like, so if I mentioned, the quants is going to be fairly easy. You'll see that it'll be like 10th grade math, but still work hard, make sure that you don't do any mistakes, try to score like as close to 170 as possible. Verbal, you have to put in a lot of work and be very patient, like develop like being able to read for these long comprehensions, and being able to decipher and build your vocabulary. So I would recommend not going through a consultation firm, doing it by yourself, preparing and working really hard. There are tons of resources that are available online, and just make sure you measure yourself every week, do practice tests and see what your score is.
Yeah, I'd like to add that, it is always easier when you're preparing for GRE to, do it in a group, like 2 or 3, or at least one other good friend of yours who has the same interest. That way, when you're preparing for the verbal, vocabulary, and those types of things, it is easier to sort of, help each other out. Also, if 2 people have a common goal, one person can motivate the other, and so I would advise you to sort of, take that route. And also, again, I'm a firm believer in doing things on your own, and so you can certainly prepare at home and do very well. So there is a question. I guess it is Malik, but I don't know. Is it Malik or Mike?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, right. So I just got 2 small questions. The first one being, I don't think GRE is considered that much in Canada, or is it? I think I've rarely heard about that. Is it true?
Yep, I agree. So most of the universities do not require GRE in Canada. I know some of them might. University of Toronto might. It helps your package. It's good to have a GRE score, but it's not required for your admission process in Canada.
All right. And the second one that I had to ask was, you said about contacting a professor might help even in a course-based masters. So how do you suppose it helps? Like, what will be our approach? How should we approach him? Can you possibly give us an example for draft or something like that?
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just worried about time. So this is something that will take. We'll answer your question, Malik, offline if you don't mind. There's another one which is Sufyan, and this would probably be the last one, and then we have to wind up. So the universities mentioned in the slide demand high GPAs and strong profiles usually. Do you think students from tier 3 colleges such as OU, JNTU affiliated programs and colleges can consider to apply for MS in CS? Can you give us few more best options for Canadian universities? So the first question I guess here is, can we do this? And so the answer should be yes. Generations of students from the type of tier 3 colleges that you are mentioning have gone to the US and have done well, so you can. And then of course the Canadian examples are here, so you could potentially apply there. You can also follow up with a question on the CETI group, and we can address it offline too. Okay, so any other student who has a question, you can post it in the WhatsApp group and we will address it. Any final thoughts before we end this, Zohaib?
Yep, I mean, we are there for you to help. So feel free to ask any of your mentors. Like if someone is interested in higher studies, I mean, even if you are not from the top tier institute like IIT, IIIT, I have so many friends over here who are from very lesser known universities in India. It does not matter. Like, I mean, it does matter to an extent, but you can circumvent that with your academic score, GRE, your package, your research, doing internships. So I would encourage people to, first of all, set their expectation. And then if you need help, if you need to have more one-on-one conversation, if someone is really interested in applying, feel free to ask me or your mentor, and we are there to help you.
Sure. Perfect. Wes, anything?
One very quick point to add is that whenever you're applying to colleges, make a list of ambitious, match, and then safe universities. There are tons of tier 3 students who end up getting into your ambitious schools as well. Make sure you build your profile, work hard. You have a few years ahead of you. Don't think that they are beyond you. Apply, but also always keep other options in mind. Just don't apply to 10 ambitious schools. Apply to some safe and moderate ones as well.
Yeah. So the prime example is Wes Siddiqui, who just spoke. He is from MJCET, where many of you are from. He went to University of California, San Diego, which is the top CS university. And he also had admissions from other universities too. So it is possible. You just have to, work hard, prepare, start early. And so this is all possible. And I guess we can only encourage you. With that note, I guess we should end this thing. So. Okay. Thank you very much, Zohaib. Thanks everybody for staying on and listening. And inshallah, we will help you to whatever extent we can as we sort of, proceed through the program and even afterwards. Khalil, can we end this now? Khalil? Okay. Perfect. I guess we can all do the job of leaving it individually, and I'm sure it will end on its own. So I'm going to start by exiting this thing. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Dr. Allah, do you have anything to add?
No. Just I was saying bye.
Acha, yes.
Bye.
Bye. Good day. Bye.
I think those of you who haven't, logged off, you can log off now. So